Good morning. Welcome to church, especially if this is your first time. I'm Bev. I'm one of the senior pastors here, alongside my husband Jason. It's so lovely to have you with us today on this lovely summer weekend. So great we can all meet together. And if you'd like to find out more about Sutton Vineyard, then please do take a look at the description below, and you can connect there with us and find out all about us. Our lovely welcome team are standing by in the wings, and they will chat to you and give you any information you might want. And if you have kids or young adults in your household, there's special weekly online services for them. So take a look at the sessions. They're on our YouTube channel. You can watch that anytime, and I hear there are some great summer challenges going on. You can keep up to date with everything that's going on by looking at our YouTube channel, our social media pages, Facebook and Instagram, and you'll find out what we're getting up to over the summer. Many of us give monthly online, but if you'd like to give a donation today, which we would so love, then please take a look at the information on the description below. Now, during August, it's summertime, we're trying to rest. Our services are going to be slightly different. There's some new faces that will appear on your screens. And after those lovely preachers, we are going to have an amazing time of worship that the lovely worship team have done at Staten House and recorded recently. And of course, don't forget, throughout the summer, this is SVC. There's a compilation of all the fun that we're going to have together, and then you can send a video of what you get up to the appointed fun ambassador in your small group. Today, at the end of our summer, we'll be hearing from Andy Hickford. Now, Andy, you will have heard Jason talk about many times. He was his youth pastor and led him to Jesus. And Andy's a great speaker. He's spoken at Spring Harvest and all sorts of things like that. He's a pastor down on the south coast now and does teaching. There's opening a retreat centre in the future. But some of you will know him and love him. You're just going to love what he has to say today.
Andy, welcome.
Morning.
Morning. It's great to be here with you. So some of the people in my church will remember when you came to our church weekend. Probably
Some time ago.
15 years ago, I think, down in wherever it was, somewhere in Dorset.
Yeah, down a very long country lane in a beautiful part of the world. Yeah,
it was lovely and sunny, and we had a great time. But my church will mostly know you with anecdotes I've shared about you over the years, so that they all know that the reason...
That makes me very nervous.
Yeah, exactly. So don't disappoint them while I'm interviewing today. So people will know that you were my youth pastor, and the reason I'm a Christian is when I came to church and you prayed for me, and I'm realizing as we do this interview that if it wasn't for that night and you're noticing what God was doing and praying for me, my church wouldn't be listening to this right now. Yeah. So I pitched this to you as us having a conversation that I've had with my church over the years about how I became a Christian and what Jesus means to me, and what, and I'll often tell them about the times when I've been down to see you and how you've helped me find Jesus. So it's probably what I've got in mind is making that conversation conscious for people and for all my church listening to this and anybody else who's tuning in, that we're going to talk about Jesus and what he means to us, which on the one hand can be really trite, but on the other hand is actually what everything is about. So, one of the things that when I come to ask you the questions and I tell my church about, I've realised with you over the years that I would come and see you, talk to you, cry, process things. You dispense leadership wisdom to me, but ultimately at the end of the day, you're right. Okay, right. So where's Jesus? Let's go to him. And I value that immensely with you. And I know a lot of people in my church right now, they're finding Jesus and looking for him. So I've got a few questions I'll ask you. Is that all right?
That sounds great, Jason.
Great. So you are at Upton Vale Baptist Church in Torquay.
I am.
You're not an ordained Baptist pastor, and we haven't got time to talk about how you got there, but before that you were at Maybridge Christian
Maybe Community Church.
Maybe Community Church, and that was down in Worthing. And you were there for how long, mate?
23 years.
23 years.
Yeah.
And then before that, you were?
I was at Stockley.
And a youth pastor, and we go all the way back to when I first met you, 1986, 5th of October on a Sunday, and you'd been at London School of Theology, and you were being bivocational with the church then, weren't you? You were a store detective.
You just blown my cover. I mean, that's like MI5. You got to use that information carefully.
Yeah. So I met you were this bivocational detective youth pastor as a growing church was looking to, and you quickly became the full-time youth pastor in the church. And I thought you were old. So I was 16 turning 17. So in 1986, how old were you?
I would have been 21.
Yeah.
No, 22.
It's funny when you're young. I just felt so grown up and ancient. But there you go.
Now look at us.
Now, yeah, catching up. I think I've gotten past you. It's the mileage, isn't it? But you don't look much different, actually, apart from the grey in your hair. So Andy, you introduced me to Jesus, and here we are, 30-something years later. I just want to go back to that night when I became a Christian. I'm using something that you shared with me, that I've shared with my church many times, that I came in, sat down, overwhelmed by the presence of God, didn't know what it was. You're a smart cookie. You figured out that the only guy in the room left in a chair when everything was cleared away means that God might be doing something. So you were very observant. I used to think, how did you know? Look, I think it was blindingly obvious, wasn't it?
It was one of the easier ones, has to be said.
Is this where we do the interview and you say you have no recollection of that night whatsoever, despite me talking about it with you for 30-something years? I bet you get off the phone and say to Keris, your wife, I still don't remember any of it.
Oh, I do remember it.
Do you actually remember it? Well, here's my recollection. And we sat down and you asked me if I knew what a Christian was. And I said, no, I'd not been to church at all. The only one reason I went because my mum was there and I wanted to make sure that you lot didn't take advantage of her. And you tried to find, you said you went off to find a journey into life, the little booklet, and you couldn't find one. And I still remember sitting there on my own thinking, where is he? And then you came back, and here's my recollection of it. You said, I can't find whatever. I was like, what does he need what is he trying to find? And my memory then is of you saying, I guess I'll have to explain who Jesus is in my own words. And we've talked about that over the years. And actually, it was one of the greatest gifts in my life that you did. Because here's my recollection. You started off and said to me, if you become a Christian, your life may not be easier. And I remember thinking, sorry, an expletive went through my head just then. You have no idea what my life is like. And of course, you had no idea my backstory and my mum and all the stuff that was going on, my dad having left. And I am immensely grateful that you didn't say, come to Jesus and everything will be rosy and perfect. And then you said, but if you become a Christian, you'll have something to live for, something to die for, meaning, adventure, and purpose every day of your life. And I remember you saying, do you want to think about this? And I went, no. I will trade my life. I remember that moment thinking, I will trade what was going on in my life and the uncertainty of the future. I will take that now. And then we prayed, gave my life to Jesus, and then everything changed. So that's my recollection of the night.
Yeah, I certainly have a very strong recollection of this thing of I want to be entirely truthful about what becoming a Christian would mean. And I still, and I've used it many, many times since, but I do remember saying to you, I didn't know what was going on in your life at that time, but I knew I had to say, this is not necessarily going to make your life easier. However, and I guess over the years I've just found that I've become very uncomfortable in certain places where the Christian story, the gospel, has been pitched to people in ways that seem more like consumeristic sales rather than actually a truthful reflection of the wonder of who Jesus is. So I think in those early days, I was just trying to navigate my own kind of sense of, we've got to be truthful about this. The Jesus is good for us. Sin is destructive, and so when we learn to live holy lives, he is therapeutic in a whole way. He does heal us up.
Yeah.
But there are dangers with coming to Jesus because we want him to make our lives better, and it's a byproduct of faith rather than the therapy being the focus in and of itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm still struck by how you introduced Jesus to me in that short summary that I just made. You didn't tell me how Jesus was incarnated, died, rose from the dead, took my sins away, all those things that I now know. I didn't even need to hear any of that. I believe it was the inspiration of the Holy Spirit. You talked from the heart about what Jesus meant to you. And I didn't, all that other stuff's important, but it was just stunning. And I've been unpacking that ever since. I found there's things that God does in your life. There's just layers and layers and layers to it. And I've always thought, I'm so glad that you couldn't find that journey until, it would have been fine. I'm sure I still would have become a Christian. Yeah. But I'm glad that's the way I was born as a Christian, something that's put into you. And I haven't told you this, I don't think. I discovered another layer to that last year on sabbatical. And you know the Enneagram and all those things and Myers-Briggs and all that stuff. You do all these things to try and understand yourself and grow as a Christian. And then I was looking at a list of all this stuff about key words that connect to people like me. And I was looking at this page and it says meaning, adventure, purpose. And I had a moment, I thought, holy crap, excuse my language. God knew back then who I was so much that he gave you my key words that would go right to the core of who I was. That's like even more stunning.
Wow.
If you could have said, God, what are the right words to say to Jason? He gave you those words that just unlocked my life. So I'm still living in that.
How wonderful is that?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Incredible. Yeah, and of course me, entirely clueless.
I know, you're just along for the ride, aren't you?
Just one of those beautiful God things.
Yeah, well, you didn't screw it up. Isn't that what it's supposed to look? How can we do the next right thing, not get in the way of what God's doing?
Yeah.
So I'm glad you didn't screw it up, but we wouldn't be here today talking and sharing. So I'm going to use that with my questions, Andy, to just have this little discussion with you. Something to live for. And you just, over the years when we've talked, heard from you early on, and it was in your heart that Jesus isn't something to get something else. And I can remember at some point over the years you talking about, have you noticed Paul's prayers? That he acknowledges people's situation, but the place he goes to is not that Jesus would get them something else, but more Jesus. Just more and more and more. He is life. He's not the thing to get a life. So my question, so I get to ask you this one. How has Jesus arrested you? How has he been your life since I met you at 21, life itself?
I love that phrase of Paul in Colossians where he talks about the mystery of Christ in you, the hope of glory. And I guess that my journey of faith has been one where I was looking for a Jesus out there and have found that this Jesus was living in me, and that now you have to be careful with that, but that has been my journey of faith. So very different background to yours. Grew up in a Christian home, didn't need any. There's never been a day that I actually doubted that Jesus Christ was Lord. So I'm a bit odd in that regard. But by the time I was a teenager, the last thing I wanted to do was to be a Christian. I thought I just associated that with a miserable life. So I did everything I could to avoid Christianity. I remember thinking to myself around 16, if I can disprove Christianity, then I'm free. And the trouble was I couldn't.
Oh, great.
And so I remember the night I became a Christian, it was about 2:00 in the morning. I was miserable. There was that massive dichotomy between what I believed to be true and how I was living, and I knew I would find no peace until I submitted. So I was the most reluctant convert. I became a Christian because I had nowhere else to go. Jesus Christ was Lord, and nothing else would resonate or be consistent until I made that acknowledgement. But actually, reluctant Christian, reluctant calling. But I've just learned the truth that in submission lies peace, in submission lies joy, in submission lies fulfillment. It turns out, amazing this, Jesus knows better how to live my life than I do. He can be trusted with my happiness. You know, my life has not been as hard as yours, but it's not been easy. But man, knowing Jesus has been utterly transformational for me. And every hard time that I've ever come to in my life, there's always been a point where Jesus has been saying, Andy, this has been great, but the coping strategies that you currently have aren't the ones that I want you to continue to have, because they'll just limit you. So we're going to do a bit of free fall, we're going to do a bit of hard work and processing, but actually you'll come to another evolution of what it is to walk with me, to live with me, to know my presence. And guess what? It's less about you and more about me. You know, I must decrease, he increases. You know, it's that stuff. But all the time, it's because of what Paul writes in Galatians, it was for freedom that Christ has set us free. And I you know, Hebrews talks about no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but afterwards produces a harvest of righteousness. And there is something I just want to say to people. I'm 56 years old. I've been following Jesus since I was about 16, 17. And he can be trusted with your happiness. He knows how you will be fulfilled better than you do. And in submission lies all the wonders of joy and peace and meaning and direction and hope and purpose and all that stuff.
Wow. Well, that brings me on to the something to die for question. Something to live for, something to die for. And over the years, one of the amazing things with our relationship is you've seen me go through some pretty painful things when I turn up at church, and my dad having left and abandoned us, the suicide of both my parents later in life, and I remember, and every single time in the most difficult things, when I went to see you and talk with you, and again I've told these stories to my church over the years, whether they remember them or not, you didn't do the easy thing, which was, you know, listen, give me some practical advice, pray for me and tell me everything was going to be okay. You, at one time, and this is a more recent one, when the stuff we were going through with legal battles for our daughter, and I remember thinking, I can't, this feels like I'm going to lose my sanity, I'm going to lose my home. And we were sitting in a cafe somewhere, and you looked across at me and you went, you do know it's all right if you do lose everything. You went to that place, not the don't worry, you won't lose everything. It was and it'll be okay if you do. I don't know many people who would say that to me with the pain and suffering I was going through. And I know when I'm with other people, there's always that tendency to want to ameliorate their suffering and stop them in whatever process they're going through to go to the cross. And that can be death itself.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that again, you may not remember that moment and it may be a reflex in you, but there's that place that we get to go to as Christians that I've learnt where it is the right thing to come to the end of ourselves and experience death. It's intrinsic to our faith. So that's me and how you help me. And I guess a lot of people in my church are looking at, and will be, as we're going through things that they're dying to at the minute. But something more personal, my question for you, when have you experienced that yourself? Because I'm pretty sure the only reason you could take me to that place is because it's a place you've been to yourself.
Okay. I've got a dodgy pancreas, so about 9 or 10 times I've been rushed into hospital, and that can't happen for too long without serious things going wrong. So it's just I won't go into the details, but
I have read up and looked at the pain of
acute pancreatitis. Yeah,
is supposed to be like one of the worst pains you can have, and my wife still won't believe it because she's never experienced it more than childbirth.
Yeah, well, there was this beautiful moment in my previous job where the manager of the Children and Family Centre, who was a mother of 3 children, when she heard that I'd had she said, I had that once, and she said it was worse than childbirth. And I did that and was hated by women forever afterwards. But so I've had that, I think we're into double figures now. And so when you're dosed up with morphine, lying in a hospital bed, drips coming out, because it all comes on very suddenly, that does give you a chance to savour your own mortality, really. I would actually view that process, it's jolly painful, but it's a bit like how we would look at a mental health episode in the past, that you come out of it richer and deeper. And the thing I want to say to people this morning, Psalm 63. In Psalm 63, King David is on the run. Okay, he is Absalom, his wayward son, has mounted this rebellion. He had this really trusted advisor called Ahithophel, and Ahithophel had sided with Absalom. Ahithophel got nothing wrong ever. David was so convinced he was about to die that he had the Ark of the Covenant with him, and he didn't want to dishonor it, so he sent it back. He is messed up. He knows the coup d'etat has been his fault. He's on the run. His trusted advisor says he's going to lose. He's so devastated that he sends the Ark of the Covenant back. And then in the desert, he meets God. And there is this beautiful, beautiful line in Psalm 63, which just says, your love is better than life. And it just struck me, when you can say that, you're utterly free. You're totally and utterly free. I might lose absolutely everything, but I cannot lose the love of Jesus Christ. I cannot lose the love of the Father revealed in his Son. I have the privilege of interviewing recently a guy who has seen over 600 people become Christian since Easter in a country that I can't name. But this revival and the suffering and persecution that goes alongside it, it doesn't happen despite the suffering. It happens because of the suffering and the persecution. There is a power that we come to when we come to the end of ourselves, and there is just this beauty. Your love is better than life. So when we're abandoned to Jesus, we're free. That's what I've learned. It's something to die for.
Sometimes think all those worship songs that we sing, that we think we mean. Take everything away, strip everything away till there's only you. We sing them with gusto and abandon. And then here we are in the middle of a pandemic with the opportunity to know that nothing can separate us, not even death.
Yeah.
Love.
Yeah.
Spectacular. So, my friend, meaning, adventure, and purpose.
Yeah.
So I'm a recovering workaholic, because of my background and the when I lean back into my past, I see abuse and lack and emptiness, and I still struggle with, I say struggle, I envy, I'm prone to that, friends who have family that love them and supported them and put them through things. And the Lord's done a lot in me to see that. But just recently, in my devotional time, what I call our chair time in the mornings, I felt the Lord, the way the Lord speaks to me, he sort of nudged me and he said, Jason, I want you to bring to mind every morning when you pray. It's one of those weird conversations, you get God to say something to you and then you unpack it afterwards, of the best things in your life. I was like, all right. So I sat down, prayed, and then didn't take very long for a few days to realize where the Lord was going with this for me. And I listed all things like going to Stopsley Baptist Church, the accident of being moved across town to a house my parents never should have bought meant that I ended up going to that church on that day and met Jesus. Meeting my wife at London School of Theology. Poor woman, what she has suffered. I know proof of the existence of God is the presence of Beverly in my life. I thought I was the catch. I realised, oh my goodness, I could not have got where I am without her love and her constant desire to seek. I'm sure you've got a wife like this. My wife will give me a kick up the backside anytime I'm not pursuing Jesus. There's no codependent covering up my behaviors. It's like, you're a follower of Jesus, get your act together. She said, which is such a blessing. Ending up at the Vineyard Church and how that's unpacked in my life. How do you accidentally become an academic and do a PhD and teach? My wife said if she'd have known when she married me I'd become a nerd, she might have thought twice. I looked at all of those things that I treasure in my life, and this realization, I felt like the Holy Spirit, do you get it yet? I was like, what? Do you see a pattern there? And it was like, every single one of those things I did not work for, I did not ask for, I did not seek. They were the sovereign work of God in my life, bringing them into my life. And that reminder again, that when you said to me that I would have meaning, adventure, and purpose, those most mean. So what you told me worked out. So thank you, meaning, adventure, and purpose. And it's like, oh Lord, just another layer again of, it's not about me. It's not about me making it. You have this life for me. So thank you for that over 30 something years. So my question for you is, how has Jesus been your meaning, adventure, and purpose as you look back over your life? I know some of the ups and downs and some of the challenges, but where do you look back on your life and see your meaning, adventure, and purpose?
It just seems to me that if the Spirit of God lives in us, the question has to be, well, why not? We worship a sovereign God who Romans 8:28 says is at work in every situation for the good of those who love you and have been called according to his purpose. So, okay, we wouldn't have chosen to be here right now.
Yeah.
But where is God? What's he doing? And how can we get on board with that? I love that. Stop me if I just start waffling.
I'm loving it.
I love that bit in Hebrews 11 where it talks about Abraham, and there are two phrases that Hebrews uses to describe Abraham. He was going to live in a land that was promised. But actually, let me get the quote right, because I've got a horrible capacity to make quotes up. But we
have a few people in our church that do know their Bibles, so this would be good to get it right.
Only a few of them. He lives as a stranger in a foreign country in a land that was promised. Yeah. And it's those two ideas that we have to hold in tension. That we're a stranger in a foreign country. This is not our home.
Yeah.
But a new heaven and a new earth is promised. So we don't cave into the pressures of the culture, but neither do we cop out, because this is the land that was promised,
Yeah.
So your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And I can't see how that doesn't bring us into a place of adventure, because the status quo cannot be right, because we're strangers in a foreign country, but we're living in a land that was promised.
Wow. Oh, awesome. So last question for you.
Mm-hmm.
So back on October the 5th, 1986, Sunday night, you pray with me. Here I am all this time later. And recalling in preparation for today, the founder of our Vineyard Church movement, don't know whether he invented the phrase or not, he said, the way in is the way on. That coming to Jesus, we know, I think most of us that become Christians know, we hand our life over to Jesus. Now, it's easy to do when you're 16 years old and are no one and have nothing. I remember hearing Andy Stanley say it's easy to surrender your life to Jesus when you have nothing and you're no one. But later on in life, when you've got a bit more accumulation in your life and you've got things that you're attached to, and I remember you prayed with me and I gave my life to Jesus, and I've been in this pandemic realizing the way in is the way on. And that's sort of been manifesting in my life into whether the Lord said it to me directly or a phrase, there's things that we put off doing and being as a Christian, aren't there? Because we're busy, I'll get round to it later, or there's this season of life. Whereas when I was first a Christian, I was all in. And I felt like the Lord said to me, Jason, if not now, when? And I was like, all right, Lord. And I'd love to make a list of those things that you keep putting off being all in on. If not now, in the middle of this, when? What will it take for you to give me the attention on the things I have for you?
Yeah.
So my little list of things, and we've got a vision statement in our church of inviting people into their next encounter with God. And I thought I'll say, the problem as a pastor is you're often too busy thinking about other people and how you can help them. So I made my little list. Prayer. I mean, I'm praying more than ever, but I mean, really prayer. I mean, like you go through the Bible and see people without management courses, leadership development programs, the internet, you name it, facing circumstances much worse than ours, prayed, and God intervened sovereignly, globally, geopolitically. Like, will I finally discover prayer at that level? I'm like, all right, Lord. Evangelism, sharing my faith, I have over the years and invited friends to Jesus, but like, what would it look like to really, in this season, the openness, and there is a genuine openness I've not seen before, and some stunning stories in our church for evangelism, risks, those things when you think, I think God's spoken to me, just get on and do it instead of persuading yourself that it wasn't the Lord, and get on with it. Care for the poor and the least. What's coming next to pour ourselves out for? Discipleship.
Yeah.
And then I guess I've put that to my church and gone, whether we get back to a school in the next few weeks or the next year, all of those things are available, and I'm going to press into them. Does anybody else want to? The way in is the way on. So maybe you've already answered this question when you talked about adventure for you, but let me land it personally for you. What is Jesus inviting you into that you have been putting off for too long? And if the Lord said to you, Andy, if not now, when? What will it take for you to, does that make sense?
Yeah. Can I answer that question in one minute? But just before you said that, I felt a prompting about something. So this idea of the way in is the way on.
Yeah.
For you, my observation of your life would be that the pain of your background
Yeah.
was the way into Jesus.
Mm.
And what has marked your discipleship journey has been that in all of those critical, many moments of enormous pain, you have sought to meet Jesus in the very circumstances that you would have wanted to run 100 miles from. And I think for people listening this morning, that is a really, really important point of how we grow in Jesus. Actually, what is the most unwelcome part of your circumstances right now? What is the bit that you'd rather not think about in this moment? That's more than likely the place that Jesus wants to do his deepest work with you. He doesn't waste our pain. So I think the way in has been the way on for you. And I think you're an example to all of us, actually, about how meeting Jesus in our pain is a key to freedom. To answer your question in terms of if not now, when, we had a remarkable experience. I was very, very happy at Maybridge Community Church. It was a wonderful place to be in leadership. I wasn't looking to leave.
Yeah.
And God started to speak to us about setting up a sanctuary and academy for leaders down in the West Country. And as usual in these things, first of all, God seemed to speak to my wife before he spoke to me, and I was slower to listen. But we have seen some absolutely remarkable things get us to a place where we are now owners of a property in a valley of outstanding natural beauty. There's one other house in half a mile, and we want to set this place up as a sanctuary and academy, a place for healing and for learning for leaders. One quick story, just one of the many bits of the story. Keris really had this vision, and we were on sabbatical a few years ago, and she was saying, I think it's time to leave Maybridge. And I was saying, no, it's not, definitely, going back for the next season. And unfortunately, in that occasion, it doesn't happen very often in our marriage, God agreed with me, not her. And so there was this brilliant moment at the end of sabbatical where Keris got down on her knees and we prayed together, and she said, okay, I surrender to you this idea of a sanctuary and academy for leaders at the cottage. So we get home, and a friend from friends comes around and says, Keris, it's lovely to see you. I've got your present. And the present was wrapped up in an old Ordnance Survey map. And as she opened the map, we recognised the area. And right in the centre of the map is the Hatchet and Brandy Cottage, where her dream was for a leadership academy. And the hair stood up on the back of my neck, and I just knew that God was saying, not now, but not ever.
Wow.
So, and there have been many, many other remarkable things. Anyway, so, it was just at the point when we realized that we would need a job in the area. When the next night, search team from Upton Vale Baptist Church decided they wanted me to be their senior minister. So there's all sorts of little bits and lots of money involved as well. But anyway, we find ourselves in this place now where we are owners of this property, but our financial partners who were with us at the start, COVID's hit, their business isn't going to be in the place that they thought it was. So we don't know how it's going to happen. We're all in. We have spent every penny. We're just out there. This property has... it's a beautiful place, but it has an asbestos roof. Doesn't have any running water. It doesn't have any central heating. Local mice are taking up residence in the building with an alarming regularity. And I don't know what God's going to do. We just know that He called us to this, and He is faithful. So if not now, when is the thing of. I've got a couple of days next week where Keris and I are just saying, coming to God and saying, okay, so Lord, what do we do now? What on earth do we do? We've got this property, but it's not fit for purpose.
Yeah.
We're going to need probably $250,000 to get it into the place where we need it to be.
Wow.
So but that feels really, I'm not scared by that. It actually feels quite healthy. I think that's what we're supposed to, we're supposed to be out on a limb. We're supposed to be all in, living by faith, not knowing where it's going to come from.
Yeah.
And watch this.
The normal Christian life.
Yeah.
Walk by faith, not by sight. Just as you're sharing that story, and then you go into it, and then you end up in this place which you didn't expect. That's that John Haggai quote, isn't it? Dare to do something so impossible it's doomed to failure unless God's in it. That's the normal Christian life. My life should not be possible unless these promises of God, are true. Yeah. And another phrase just came to mind. Don't doubt in the dark what God told you in the light.
Yes.
Isn't that the experience?
That's a lovely phrase.
You go into something, there's God's light. You don't get more light shining than an ordnance survey map, and then suddenly it gets dark again, and you're like, "Oh, did God really?" You see that scripture. Did God really say?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
the enemy does, doesn't he? Well, thanks, Andy. It's been lovely to have this conversation.
Bless you. Privilege. My love to Sutton Vineyard. Keep doing what you're doing.
Well, as they're watching this, and then we've got different friends around the world, would you pray for us? Pray for my church as they're watching this in our Sunday service in August, and pray for them.
Yeah, we'll do.
Great.
Jesus, thank you that we are your church and the gates of hell will not prevail against us. Lord, thank you for the privilege of being your people. And I want to pray for Sutton Vineyard this morning, and for all those who are listening to this, that we would be anointed, as Jason's been reminding us this morning, with the spirit of the normal Christian life, of all in, of a life of purpose and adventure, something to live for, something to die for. Discovering that it's only in complete surrender that we know joy and freedom and hope and purpose. That, Lord, that I pray for that discovery in all of our lives, that just being all in with Jesus is the way to live. Lord, thank you that you model that for us. Thank you that you are working within us to replicate yourself in us. And we pray, Jesus, that your surrender, your commitment, your courage, your determination to obedience, to faithfulness would be realized within all of our lives. Lord, we entrust ourselves to you that we would be the church you've made us to be. For the glory of Christ, we ask this. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Wow. Thank you, my friend. And may the Lord bless you too. Thank you for being with us, and send our love from our church. Bye, Andy.
In the darkness we were waiting, without hope, without light, till from heaven you came running. There was mercy in your eyes, to fulfill the law and prophets. To a virgin came the word, from a throne of endless glory to a cradle in the dirt. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King. redeem the whole creation. You did not despise the cross, or even in your suffering you saw to the other side. Knowing this was our salvation, Jesus, for our sake you died. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. In the morning that you rose, all of heaven held its breath, till that stone was moved for good, for the Lamb had conquered death. And the dead rose from their tombs, and the angels stood in awe, for the souls of all who'd come to the Father are restored. And the church of Christ was born, then the Spirit lit the flame. Now this gospel truth of all shall not kneel and shall not faint. By his blood and in his name, in his freedom I am free. For the love of Jesus Christ, who has resurrected me. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. Praise forever to the King of Kings.
You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you, I worship you. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, healing every heart. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, turning lives around. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, mending every heart. I worship you, I promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. 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 Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. Never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. 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 Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. That is who you are. That is who you are.
You give life. You give life. You are love. You give light to the darkness. You give hope. You restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise, pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. You give life. You give life. You are love. You bring light to the darkness. You give hope. You restore every heart the earth. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise. Pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour. It's your breath. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise. Pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. Let these bones sing. Oh, oh. Let all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise. Pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out. It's your breath. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise. Pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. Great are you, Lord. Great are you, Lord.
Dear Jesus, I pray for all the people who are sick and who need support. I pray for all the doctors who are helping and who need lots of help. I pray for the church family for helping us too. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that you had a great time watching and listening. I hope you have a great week, that you have a restful summer. Let me pray. The Lord bless you, the Lord keep you, the Lord make his face to shine upon you, to be gracious unto you, and give you his peace. Amen. See you next week.